Good afternoon and good morning to those of you on the West Coast. Welcome to the 2017 CoSN K-12 IT Leadership Survey Results Webinar. The survey says, I'm Mike Jamerson, Director of Technology for Bartholomew Consolidated School Corporation and past Chair of the CoSN Board. We'll introduce our speakers and then we'll move on to turn the program over to School Dude for a short introduction. After that, Paula and I will review the results. Our speakers today are Paula Malin from Paula Malin Consulting, Nick Marissis, VP of Marketing for School Dude and a fellow CoSN board member, and Chris DeJunis, School Dude Applications Engineer. And so, without further delay, here's Nick Marissis.
Thanks, Mike. Really appreciate it. And good morning, good afternoon to everyone. We are really pleased for another year to help support and sponsor this really valuable research initiative that so many of you find value in and share with CoSN that is a resource that you use in your own districts. I think what you'll see as Paul and Mike start talking about some of the results is that this year's survey once again echoes what a number of the CoSN members and districts have shared with us, and that is that there remain some IT budget constraints and that there continue to be challenges around mobile learning and that is an increased priority. So we hope that you receive value from the survey, that it enlightens in terms of the performance metrics that can help you think about a data-driven decision-making environment for your school district and some of the choices, decisions, projects, priorities that you'll be making in the coming year. And so with that, I'd like to transition it to my friend Chris.
Thank you very much, Nick. Again, my name is Chris DeJunis here, one of the application engineers at School Dude. Really what that means is I'm fortunate enough to be on the ground and get to visit with a lot of our clients, come see what you're doing there within your districts and across the country. So I wanted to just start here with this slide and talk a little bit more about what we've been doing. As some of you have probably noticed, we've been around the CoSN area a lot more. We've been attending a lot of the events and really trying to fully embrace that idea of being one of your partners and not just a sponsor or somebody else that you look to when you need something. So we've been learning with you. We've been attending a lot of the courses that you do, and we've combined that with the impact, the footprint we have on the educational landscape across the country, as you can see from the map. People in your position, IT leaders within education, are coming to us constantly with challenges. As we get those challenges and develop tools to help you out, we've started asking ourselves, what can we do? What can we provide more than just software and tools to really help these IT leaders in this educational environment? So if we move to the next slide here, we'll see some of those challenges that continue to pop up, and I'm certainly preaching to the choir here. This is nothing new for anybody that's listening in today. But these are the consistent ones that we're constantly seeing. Lack of budget, obviously. We've been hearing that sort of thing. Well, I'd say since the beginning of time as far as education is concerned. Obviously, more and more devices are popping up. They're here to stay within the classroom and within the educational landscape across the country. And a lot of these things leave us in reactive mode. So these are the themes that we were constantly seeing. We took that feedback, again, with the input from a lot of our partners with CoSN. And what we've done is use these conversations. As we move to the next slide here, you're going to see we've actually come up with a new framework that goes hand in hand with the new suite of tools that we've been rolling out over the course of the last 12 months or so. If you have seen us in person, either at the CoSN events or on-site or have attended any of our presentations, you've gotten a sneak peek of some of those new tools that we've rolled out, but we also have been working with this new framework. We've got a nice little acronym that we call AFM, but really what it gets down to is we want to provide you with a life cycle framework so you can start scaling your IT department, not just being in reactive mode. How do you really plan for where you're going and those future needs, while at the same time being able to handle the day-to-day things that are continuously popping up, which can easily leave you in reactive mode. So we've developed a suite of tools to help you out. This framework was again developed with your feedback based off of the questions, challenges, a lot of the things that we were hearing from there. So as you spend more time with us over the coming months, as we see you in person, we will be referring back to this framework very often. So if you've seen us in the past or worked with us, this may be something new. So we'll work through these ideas with you, show you some of what we have to develop here. In fact, I'll give you a little sneak peek of what the new platform looks like here, and a little bit of background of how we set this up. The first piece that we rolled out came out in about January of 2016. It's part of the new TechnologyEssentials platform. It's called Insight, very aptly named because what we're talking about here is a lightweight network scan. It's literally designed to discover the IP addresses that are out there on your network, and then we'll use additional probes to figure out more information about those devices, also determine and discover the software that may be living there. The idea is we want to give you a one-stop shop to have all of your hardware and software inventory. From there, we can really start figuring out, okay, let's assess. From that assessment of what we have out there on the network currently, now we can start prioritizing and planning for those future needs. So you can start seeing how this framework can guide the process there. Next up, about halfway through 2016, we rolled a mobile device management piece into the same platform. This is a completely new area for us. Our mobile device management tool allows you to inventory those mobile devices. So now you have hardware, software, mobile inventory in one place. But as any solid MDM platform allows you to do, you also get management of those devices as well. So iOS and Android devices, not only are you able to inventory them, but now you can also manage them. If I need to set up different profiles depending on my grade level or how I want my user to interact with that device, that's the type of profiles, that's the way we're able to start managing these devices now. And then finally, bringing us up into 2017 here, one of the most exciting parts is the updated help desk that we're going to be rolling out. Some of you had a chance to take a look at that in Chicago for the CoSN National Conference that we all just attended. You gave us some feedback. It was great to see what you thought about the new platform and get your ideas for how we can really add some additional features to that. So you have all of the inventory in one place. Naturally, we want to tie our tickets, projects, any work we're doing to our inventory. We want to track it, right? That's the name of the game nowadays, is having this real-world data so we can actually show up at those board meetings with, a report saying, hey, no longer are we, bringing feelings to a fact fight. I've armed myself with facts and real data because I've got all of this under one platform. So that's the idea behind the suite there. On the last slide, you'll see really under that gold column, the technology management suite. We've brought it all together under the one unified platform. It could not look more different than our legacy help desk solution if you have any experience with that. So we would certainly be happy to give you a look at it, also walk you through that new APM framework that we were talking about there, and really figure out how we can work together by utilizing the resources that we bring to the table and figuring out how it can best work for you. So again, we thank you for your time. We're really excited to review these results with you. If anybody has any questions, we'll be hanging around to answer those as well. So thank you.
Thank
Excellent.
you, Chris.
Those are some exciting developments, Chris. We also want to thank you, School Dude, for sponsoring the survey. In particular, there's one other group we want to recognize, and that's our partner in this survey, MDR, who assisted us in the creation, distribution, and analysis of the results. The goals of the survey were three in number. First, to track the information of K-12 EdTech priorities, IT leadership, characteristics, staffing, and budget. Second, we really wanted to provide some information to help inform CoSN's members' decisions regarding the tools and the resources that we develop for our members. And finally, we wanted to be able to identify the kinds of changes that are taking place in our IT challenges over time. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Paula to tell us a little bit about the survey.
Sure. Thank you, Mike. And as you said, changes over time. This is our 5th annual survey, so we're going to have some trend data that we'll be able to share this year. Just some background, the survey is conducted January through March. We had over almost 500 responses to 51 questions. That's a lot of questions, but we actually reduced them from prior year. And although we tried to keep the questions the same year over year so we can get some trend data, we do change and modify each year. We tweak it a bit. And this year we added questions about personal use of online courses, peer-to-peer technology reviews, as well as some questions on interoperability. A little bit about the organizations. As you can see from the numbers there, this is essentially a survey that covers public schools. 88% of our respondents were from the public school sector, and that is fairly consistent for year over year. For consistency with other CoSN surveys, a new enrollment category was included as an answer option to the question about district student enrollments this year. The new category was added to separate that under 1,000 from the under 2,499 group. And while the percentages of respondents who have enrollments under 2,500 remains essentially unchanged from prior year, we now know that almost a quarter of all respondents work in districts with enrollments under 1,000. When segmenting respondents by metropolitan status, suburban districts comprise the largest segment with 47%. Almost a third are from rural districts, and almost a quarter are from urban districts. While this representation is consistent with the demographic survey results from the prior year, it does not align with the general public school demographics. Nearly half of all school districts are rural, and only 7% are urban. However, urban districts have much higher enrollments than their rural counterparts. So while urban districts are overrepresented in the survey results, these districts comprise much greater numbers of the student body and represent 36% of total U.S. enrollment.
After we found out about the school systems in which our IT leaders worked, we asked questions about the IT leaders themselves. One of the first questions we asked was, what is your highest level of education achievement? A majority reported some college beyond a bachelor's degree. What do you think that percentage was? Well, the survey says 77%.
And this includes 8% with doctorate. A Master's of Education represented the highest level of education achievement for most respondents by far, with 39%. The next highest category was other masters with 18%. And 4% of our respondents had an MBA.
Another area we wanted to explore was what best described the primary professional background of our IT leaders. And the survey said,
a majority of respondents, 52%, identified education instruction as their background. And this aligns with the responses from the academic achievement question, where Master's of Education was by far the most common highest degree held. With 38%, technology technical is the next largest category, followed by business management with 6% and other with 5%.
So, how many years of experience in K-12 IT do you think most of respondents have? Well, the survey says
43% of respondents have been in their current position for between 1 to 5 years. Although the survey shows that the vast majority, 73% of IT leaders, have worked in the K-12 education technology fields for more than 10 years, most have been in their current position a much shorter time. When looking at the 5-year survey results, we see that the 1 to 5 year span is consistently the most common tenure length. There's a clear drop-off in rates in the next span, 6 to 10 years. In 2017, the drop-off was the steepest, with 21% in the 6 to 10 year range, down from 43% in the 1 to 5 year range. However, this does align with the general tenure statistics for management and professionals, where the median is 5.5 years.
Diversity in top senior positions has been a question that we've looked at before. And we find that there is a lack of diversity in our school system's top senior positions. But that lack of diversity also persists across all industries. The lack of racial diversity has been highlighted in the survey results since we first started collecting this data in 2015. Those of you who remember the results from last year know the answer for this year. The percentage of white IT leaders has not changed from 2016. So just how white are we?
The overwhelming majority of IT leaders, 90%, are white, with only 4% of survey respondents identifying as Black or African American. In terms of ethnicity, only 5% of respondents were Hispanic or Latino or of Spanish origin. This gap between the racial and ethnic profiles of K-12 students and those who serve them is not limited to IT leaders. The same gap is noted for teachers, principals, and superintendents as well. According to a 2016 Brookings study, the teacher diversity gap between Black teachers and Black students will, quote, remain the same, essentially the same, at least through the year 2060. This gap will actually increase for Hispanic teachers and Hispanic students over that same period. The glacial pace of positive change can be seen when looking at the history of racial profile statistics for superintendents. It took a decade to move the dial from 5% to 6% for superintendents of color. So while there's no clear solution to the diversity gap, it is a problem that's not likely to go away on its own.
So responsibilities vary from district to district, but the majority of IT leaders describe the responsibilities in one of these 4 ways. The survey says,
the vast majority of IT leaders are responsible for both instructional and administrative technology, a consistent pattern over the 5 years. The highest response rate was 83% in the first year of the survey, compared with 61% this year. This represents a downward trend, although not in a straight line. Though the numbers remain small, the trend is clearly upwards for IT leaders to be the person in charge of instructional technology only, with 2% in 2013, growing to 11% in 2017. The response rate for person in charge of administrative technology only has remained constant at 10% since increasing from its 2013 low of 8%.
as districts transition to digital content, our CTOs are playing an increasing role in content purchasing decisions. When asked, how would you describe your general level of involvement in your district's decision to purchase digital content? Our respondents said, what percentage do you think identified themselves as a key influencer? The survey says.
So I gave away the answer too soon, but it's about a third. This is roughly the same percentage as a prior year, which was 30%. However, there were twice as many respondents reporting that they are the decision makers, 16% as compared to the prior year's 8%. Only 5%, the smallest response rate for any answer option category, were not involved in purchasing digital content. This reflects the slight decrease from 7% the prior year. These shifts towards greater purchasing influence suggest that where digital content is concerned, districts are recognizing the importance technical integration plays in the ability of content to affect student outcomes. When asked about their involvement in the purchase of specific digital content, there are clear year-over-year increases from every category, with not involved decreasing 9% from the prior year. This further supports the notion that IT leaders are emerging as important stakeholders in content decisions. The two areas with the heaviest involvement, the majorities in both, are the same as the prior year: productivity tools and content creation tools, the bottom two on the screen.
Salaries have been fairly stagnant since 2013, with the majority of IT leaders, 61% this year, consistently earning less than $100,000. There were gains in the 130,000 plus crowd, but where the percentage of respondents nearly doubled from 6% to 11% over 5 years. We also found that women are overrepresented in the lowest salary category, under 70,000. Despite comprising less than half, 47% of all respondents, women account for the majority, 66%, in this range. This compares to salaries of $130,000 and above, where women account for only 30%.
One characteristic that does not appear to align with salary is a level of educational attainment. Despite women being only 47% of respondents, they comprise comprise 55% of respondents with postgraduate degrees. However, the lower rates of pay for women can in part be explained by the level and size of organization in which IT leaders work. Only 38% of women respondents work at the district level versus the school level, as opposed to 62% of the male respondents. Women were the majority, 63% of respondents, in the districts with the lowest enrollments, under 1,000. As district enrollments increased, the percentage of women IT leaders decreased. The only exception was with enrollments over 50,000, where the female-to-male ratio was 53% versus 47%. This is heartening, but the actual number of women affected is small, since large districts comprise only 7% of schools.
So we next wanted to talk about the top priorities for our IT leaders. For the last 5 years, we've asked our IT leaders to identify their top 3 priorities. What do you think was the #1 priority in 2017? Well, the survey says
mobile learning. This is the first time it has taken the top spot, but as you can see, it's ranked in the top 3 for 4 of the 5 years that we've conducted the survey. So it's a consistent priority. The #2 priority is broadband and network capacity, an initiative closely tied to mobile learning goals and also frequently listed among the top 3 priorities. Note that cybersecurity breaks into the top 3 for the first time, making a fast climb from last year's #10 ranking. Previously, cybersecurity had only incremental gains from its initial 13th place rank. The rise of the cybersecurity concern is not surprising. The increasing number of reports about K-12 security breaches and the recent IRS alert about school phishing scams easily explains this year's rise of cybersecurity in the top ranks of IT leader priorities.
Based on the rise of cybersecurity as a priority, it's not surprising that many IT leaders rated privacy and the security of student data as important compared to last year. So, what percentage of IT leaders rated privacy and security as more important? Well, the survey says
61%. That includes a 30% that indicated privacy and security were much more important as compared to last year. Only 1% indicated it was less important. It is worth noting that while privacy was not one of the top 3 priorities, it ranked just below cybersecurity as the 4th highest priority this year. This is in stark contrast with its ranking in 2014, the first year it was an answer option on our priority list, where privacy was ranked 2nd to last. Only green computing received a lower rank that year.
We've been looking at BYOD as part of an instructional initiative since 2014. This year, we once again asked our IT leaders more or less interested than they were in 2014. Well, the survey says?
Well, the percentage of districts claiming no interest in BYOD as part of a one-to-one initiative has steadily increased over time. This year's high of 34% indicates that interest in BYOD might be waning. New Microsoft Windows-based devices that are priced for the education market and the enhanced functionality of the already affordable Chromebooks are likely continue to reduce the need for and interest in BYOD strategies. Other factors that could be contributing to a move away from BYOD include online assessment requirements, interoperability issues, and equity challenges. Note, however, that the percentage of districts with fully implemented BYOD/BYOT has increased from 24% from 16% the prior year. Correspondingly, the percentages went down in the categories of planning, piloting, and working on large implementations. This indicates that those districts that have embarked on BYOD initiatives are moving steadily towards implementation.
Open education resources, OER, have received a lot of recent attention, especially since the 2015 federal government Go Open initiative. So we asked our leadership about the importance of OER. What percentage of the respondents do you think rated OER as not important? Well, the survey says
only 12%. And that's about the same as those rating OER as extremely important, which had 11% response rate. In general, year-over-year responses were similar regarding the level of importance OER had in districts' digital content strategy. The overwhelming majority of respondents this year and last year, 79% and 78% respectively, indicated that OER was part of their district's digital content strategy. About a quarter this year rated OER as very important. Somewhat important was the largest category in both years, with 44% this year.
this was the first year that the survey asked about interoperability. Of the 4 interoperability initiatives listed here, which one do you think is the most implemented? Well, our survey says
Single sign-on. It was the most implemented of all the initiatives that we asked about. The majority, 60% of respondents, have partially or fully implemented single sign-on. A majority of respondents indicated they were at least in the planning stages for every initiative. This speaks to the importance districts place on interoperable systems. However, the fully implemented percentages highlight how far districts have to go in achieving interoperability they desire. With 19%, single sign-on had the highest percentage in the fully implemented category. Data dashboards, the second highest ranked initiative in the fully implemented category, had roughly half that amount, only 10%.
Since 2014, the surveys asked about the outsourcing of IT functions. So, would you expect IT leaders today are doing more outsourcing or less outsourcing than they did in 2014? Well, the survey says
the trend line shows a decline, with 49% of this year's respondents indicating that no IT functions are outsourced, compared with 32% in 2014. Only 45% indicated their districts currently outsource one or more functions, compared with 59% in 2014. When we asked about the specific functions that were outsourced, all categories had significant year-over-year growth. So despite an apparent overall decline, the districts that do outsource are doing so for more of their IT functions. The outsourcing of service agreements rose to 30% in 2017 from 18% the prior year. In the same time period, remote network maintenance rose to 27% from 15%. IT support for users and software installation outsourcing rates rose in equal amounts to 8% in 2017 from 2% the prior year.
our districts can't really take advantage of new educational software with old computers. Since 2014, the survey has asked about the age of district-owned computers. In 2017, what do you think is the response rate for respondents reporting none of their computers are 5 years or more old? Well, the survey says
8%. This is only a slight improvement from 2014, when 5% of respondents reported that none of their computers were 5 or more years old. Overall, there has been modest improvement regarding the aging of district-owned computers. When the question, what percentage of your district-owned computers are 5 or more years old, was first asked in 2014, almost a quarter of respondents worked in districts where the majority, meaning more than 50%, of their computers were older than 5 years. Today, the districts with the majority of older computers are down to 17%.
This year, we asked a new question about peer-to-peer technology reviews. A technology peer review is a quality assurance process whereby various organization stakeholders assess how well a system meets defined requirements across their respective functional areas. This review methodology is commonly used in the tech sector for debugging software, but it is not necessarily a common practice in K-12. What percentage of K-12 leaders have done a peer-to-peer review? Well, the survey says
27%. Of those that have conducted peer-to-peer reviews, 23% report that they like them, as compared to just the 4% who have done peer reviews but don't like them. But we expect the number of IT leaders conducting peer reviews to increase, as CoSN has just launched a new peer-to-peer resource for district leaders.
At the CoSN conference this year, someone mentioned that technology budgets have been an issue for the past 75 years. Well, this year, have the majority of budgets decreased, stayed the same, or increased? Well, the survey says
the person in the audience was right, stayed the same. In fact, budgets have stayed the same for the majority of respondents since 2013. Unfortunately, fewer districts are receiving budget increases than in the past. This is a downward trend over 4 years. This year, a quarter of respondents reported budget increases compared with 34% high in 2014. At the same time, there has been a 7% increase in respondents reporting reduced budgets, from 9% in 2014 and 2015 to 16% this year.
it's the nature of technology that we have challenges. But for the past 5 years, the survey has asked IT leaders to identify their top 3 challenges. What do you think the #1 challenge in 2017 was? Well, the survey says,
for the 3rd straight year and for 4 out of 5 years, budget issues are ranked the #1 challenge IT leaders face to planning and implementing technology-enabled learning environments. The 1 year it was not ranked first, 2014, it was ranked 2nd. The persistence of this issue indicates that IT leaders with flat budgets, and possibly those with increased budgets, struggle to meet objectives. Dealing with silos has been the 2nd most persistent issue over the past 5 years, consistently appearing in the #2 or #3 slot. The survey asked respondents to assess their staffing resources for 8 different IT functions. While staffing continues to lag behind departments' needs, the staffing to match needs response rate has increased between 1% and 3% from the prior year from almost every function. However, the rates in this category remain dismal, with 18% each install IT applications and maintain IT applications represent the highest response rate in the match to needs category. In the category on the other side of the spectrum, can't get to critical areas, modest improvements have been made from prior year. The response rates going down without exception for every IT function listed. Although the response rates have changed, the 3 IT functions that are least supported are the same as the prior year: integrated technology in the classroom, implement new technology, and plan for technology. Those are those 3 categories at the bottom of the chart.
if you're like my department, we do spend time reacting to technical problems. So this year, the survey asked what percentage of your department's workload is reacting to technical problems as opposed to working in a proactive mode. How much of their time did a majority of the respondents attribute to troubleshooting? Well, the survey says
the majority of respondents reported more than 50% of their workload is spent reacting to technical problems. 38% estimated between 51 and 75% of their time is spent troubleshooting, and 14% estimated between 75% and 100% of their time was spent on technical problems.
the CETL credential has been around for several years, and CoSN obviously feels it's extremely important, as do a majority of our survey respondents. But how many rated CETL as not important? Well, the survey says 8%. We hope that those 8% will find the same value that we do in the CETL, as well as recognize its importance to the empowered superintendent.
To help develop its program offerings, like the CETL, CoSN asked respondents to indicate their preference for taking online courses. Do you think they had a preference? Well, the survey said the preference was for self-paced. 51% was preferred by the majority. Moderated, with 31%, was a distant second choice, followed by no preference, with 15%. The remaining 3 didn't know. While there's general agreement that completion rates for self-paced online courses is low, generally cited between 5 and 15% completion rate, those that do complete courses are cited as having, quote, the ability to cut through the noise and find the content and opportunities to address and meet their goals. We feel these are skills possessed by every successful IT leader. And that concludes the PowerPoint slides for today, but you can download the full report and see even more charts by following this link.
So at this point, we'd like to open it up for questions and answers. And I do know that there was one question about how many respondents were there. Paula, would you like to speak to them?
Sure. The total, those that completed survey, there were more that were incomplete, but those that completed the total survey was 495.
And that was, Paula, representative.
Yeah, I actually don't have that percentage, but it's I want to say it's a 4% margin error. It's usually between 3 and 5. I think this year was 4%.
So if you have questions, simply type them in the chat box. Marcy will be forwarding those to us. One of the interesting pieces I think that I found in the survey results were the difference in emphasis on BYOD as well as how outsourcing has changed. I was a little surprised about BYOD not being part of initiatives, and I was also a little surprised that outsourcing not being more important. I'm not quite sure where some of those results come from. Are there thoughts or questions that you all would like in that area?
I would just make one comment about the the outsourcing bit is it was a surprise since outsourcing is sort of the buzzword in the private sector, but I think it just may be that some of those functions to outsource is that they just don't either they have been building the competencies in house because as technology clearly become part of districts' needs. So they've built that up as well as a lot of the technology that is now available in terms of the cloud and Chromebooks is that they don't necessarily need the kind of support that perhaps they had in the past. So it just may be easier to manage internally than it had been just maybe a few years ago. One question that came up in the session was, was the idea about cloud and how that comes in outsourcing. So it's likely one of the modifications we'll do in next year's survey is pulling out, cloud versus outsourcing. People may be defining that differently.
I think one of our participants pointed out that from an instructional and an equity standpoint, the promotion of BYOD does make it difficult for teachers to design with specific tools, apps, and services. From my standpoint, in our district, at one point BYOD was important to us, but we made the decision to actually go to support BYOD, but also to go to a district-provided device for every child. We felt that was both an equity issue as well as an online testing issue that was important. Chris?
Yes.
If I could engage you, were there any as you listened to the survey results, were there any areas that might have surprised you or given you that you might have an insight in?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked, Mike. And one of the things that we found surprising, both good and bad, is the rise of the security and the privacy of data, that sort of thing. We keep, I would say we kind of stay abreast of what's going on in a lot of the technology marketplace, not just in education, just so we know what's going on and can try to bring things from that private sector to the education market to help out. But it's kind of surprising to see how long it's taken for that to really rise to the top, those security and privacy issues. But when you start digging into some of the research out there about not only malware, but we're seeing the increase of ransomware specifically, man, it's good that it is finally starting to get the attention it deserves, because some of the ransomware we've seen starting to proliferate out there can be absolutely crippling. So it's no longer just healthcare and finance that we see it in. Naturally, it makes sense to me that we would see it spreading as fast as it is into education, especially higher ed. When you start having that much student data involved, it's just going to be a natural target. So kind of a twofold surprise there. Surprising that it took as long as it has, but also a pleasant surprise to see it moving up to the list.
Thank you. Paula, one of the questions that we have from the audience is regards the importance of the CETL. And do we have statistics that would tell us how that varies between CoSN and non-CoSN members?
Oh, that's interesting. I don't, and we didn't really ask. Actually, maybe that's something we want to ask in the surveys. Are you a CoSN member? For survey respondents, we don't have that. But it may be something that that CoSN does track, and so I can follow up. And if the person wants to leave their email address, I can follow up with the answer or let them know that we don't have it.
Okay. And there is a great deal of back data that we have on all of these elements, but it does take some fishing to find out specific answers.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, as you saw, the survey, we did segment, like the one statistic on, the women's salaries. We were able to segment it because we do ask a question on, the size of your district. We do have a lot of data to pull the report together. We don't report on everything, but sometimes we do go back, to get more information. In this particular question, since I don't ask if the survey doesn't ask if you're a CoSN member, we won't be able to segment that out. But there may be something we could do on those who did offer their, their email addresses. There may be some way to look at what districts. But it's probably more likely that we just might ask that question next year and see how we could just, slice the survey that way if you're a member versus not a member, or is there a difference on these various questions? I think that would be very good question to add actually for next year.
Excellent. Well, there is actually one more piece that I would like to mention before, if there are no more questions. One of the, something near and dear to my heart, next year, on March 12th through the 15th, will be CoSN's national conference held in Washington, D.C., and I hope to see all of you there. It will certainly be a wonderful time.
And you'll get the results of the 2018 IT Leadership Survey if you come. So we hope you can join us.
Thank you. Nick, thank you for joining us today. And Chris, thank you. Paula, always a pleasure presenting with you.
Likewise, Mike.
And with that, good night, America.